Hello everybody, welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown Tactics Show. I'm joined as always by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst, and we're back again this week to cover everything Manchester United versus Liverpool, as the game saw a 2-2 draw and 1 point for each team. And it was a very interesting game, and we want to talk about just why it was more interesting for Manchester United, because going into this game, Manchester United hadn't scored at Anfield since 2016, and they scored 2 goals in the same game. And if we look at their per game numbers, Manchester United had more, obviously, goals, total shots, touches in the opposition's box, XG, successful passes ended in the final third, and open play crosses in this game in comparison to any other game that they played at Anfield. So we're going to kick it right off and just get into what Liverpool tried to do against Manchester United and how Manchester United nullified it and then developed on their own performance. So I'm going to ask Umir to kindly kick us off and just go through what Liverpool tried to do, especially in the forward line, that caused Manchester United some early worries.
Yeah, we've seen a lot from Liverpool this season with this front line, this sort of varied front line. It's different to the front line that we've seen from Liverpool given last season, for example. And we've seen Diaz take up this central role a lot more often. The value with Diaz in particular is, one, his incredible intensity and that energy to press the forward line, and I think we saw that in the first half in particular, but it's also what he does in possession that's really impressive and really important. So with Diaz playing in that central position, we saw him kind of take up this false nine position. False nine positions, we tend to associate with players dropping deep centrally. We saw that with Firmino for Liverpool over many years, but Diaz tended to do this moving horizontally, so he tended to float out to the wider areas, which was difficult at times for United to kind of keep a hold of. We saw De Ligt follow him into those wide areas often, and that was the case on both sides actually. Lisandro followed Mo Salah when he did drop deep, and those wide players did move forward. So we'll touch upon that when we talk about Manchester United out of possession. But that movement, vacating that front line from those attacking players, did cause some trouble for Manchester United in their back line. Lastly, I would say a really impressive feature for Liverpool, particularly in the first half. I think Liverpool did get the majority of the XG in this game, even though it felt like United were fairly dominant, particularly in the second half. And that mainly came through the good movements of the number 8s for Liverpool in the first half. When those frontline players did vacate those spaces, when those wide centre-backs of Manchester United did push up a little bit, we saw particularly McAllister make those runs, those darting runs into the box, become the extra player, often not picked up, given that the wing-backs were occupied with the wingers or the attackers moving wide, and then you had McAllister and sometimes Jones in these situations where they had the ability to strike the ball in Manchester United's box. So that's generally what Liverpool tried to do. They had 2 centre-backs at the back who kind of had time and space to play the ball, and then because the spaces were in the wide areas, they were funneled wide, but they did try to attack the box centrally. And they were good for that in the first half, but as the game progressed, United did stifle them a little bit, and we will certainly talk about that too.
Yeah, I think one of the main things I picked up on there, which you just covered really well, was Liverpool went very much 4-3-3 in this game. They've looked sometimes a bit more 4-2-3-1, 4-2-4, but in this game it was very much 2 split 8s ahead of a 6. And what they were trying to do is manipulate Manchester United's midfield, and because the 2 in midfield are constantly always man marking, in Ugarte and Mainu in this instance, if you push 2 high 8s beyond the last line and they make these late runs into the box, then the midfield too has no other choice but to follow them deep and to basically follow the ball handler if they go with the ball or off the ball into Manchester United's penalty area. And what we saw in the first 5 minutes, and they created a really good chance from it for Alexis McAllister. He tried to do a little flick, but in the first 5 minutes we almost saw Manchester United completely vacated into the block, and it almost looked like a 7-2-1 at times because of how many backwards runner Manchester United actually had in their own back line. They were retreating for everything, and that's the hallmark of an Arne Slot team. They wanted to suffocate Manchester United, and they actually had some initial success with that, but I think the game changed pace come Amad Diallo's big chance with a beautiful Diogo Dalot cross. Right, so moving on into Manchester United's pressing shape. Now, Arne Slot mentioned after the game that he expected Manchester United to be a lot more front-footed, not only in their approach on the ball, but off the ball as well. And what we've seen from Manchester United under Amorim so far is that when teams are trying to build out slowly from the goalkeeper, it's a very narrow press, and it leaves a lot to be desired in the wide areas for the opposition. And what happened in this game was when Alisson was on the ball, they were looking to filter it down the sides, and then that would call on the wing-backs to step up. Now, because Manchester United are going 2v2 against Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis McAllister, it meant that Curtis Jones was often the spare man when he dropped in. And when Curtis Jones is dropping in from almost a number 10 position, it calls on players to step out of the back line, as Umir mentioned before, with Lisandro Martinez and Matthias de Ligt both going man-to-man with Salah and Luis Diaz. But in certain occasions, it was actually Harry Maguire who stepped up onto the 9. And when he was following really deep, it meant that Liverpool were playing a simple 1-2 around him as he was joining up to the press late. And then Liverpool counter-attacked through Manchester United's pressing shape, and they were pretty much in. And then I want Umir now to touch on why this was a big learning curve in the game for Manchester United, because there were certain moments in the press where Liverpool were finding them narrow fullbacks as they come inside, just in behind Manchester United's 210s, and they were cutting through Manchester United quite efficiently, and how Ruben Amorim kind of saw this, and the players take credit for it as well. In the game, they looked at the game state, looked at what was going wrong, and went with a bit more reserved approach in a defensive shape. So I want Umir to touch on why and how they did that.
Yeah, I would say if we're talking about Manchester United under Amorim, we've seen them deploy sort of 5-2-3 in previous games. We look at the Newcastle game, I suppose, as the biggest example of this being exploited. 3 Newcastle midfielders against Manchester United's 2 in there, and there was a lot of space around those 2 central midfielders that was exploited. And with Liverpool, with the physical presence of Gravenberch in there, with McAllister and Jones being able to turn and carry the ball, Liverpool often play with this sort of staggered midfield where 1-2s can certainly get you in and around a midfield 2. So an improvement on Amorim's part, and I think this was a premeditated plan from him to ask Amad Diallo and Bruno Fernandes to play this sort of hybrid role, in the sense that, look, you have to push forward and attack as 10s, but out of possession, your narrow left midfielders and right midfielders. And we saw a sort of 5-4-1, a very narrow central 5-4-1 from Manchester United that stopped Liverpool progressing the ball through those midfield areas. When the ball did go out wide, obviously the wide midfielders in Amad and Bruno did shuffle out into those areas and support their wing back. But their main function, their main purpose was to block those central areas, and they did that really well. I think there were occasions in which they did press, and the first goal for Manchester United did come about because of Bruno Fernandes' pressure and Manchester United's front forward pressure. And there is that sort of messaging throughout the team as to, if the team does decide to go, then you follow. Your back line doesn't wait, it doesn't hold. Maguire is a player I want to touch upon, and sometimes he was caught out, like H mentioned, but I thought his willingness to step all the way into the opposition's half and follow his players, Lisandro as well at times, it was a really brave, and it feels uncomfortable for centre-backs to do so, but it meant that they were less exposed. Jones wasn't able to receive the ball, turn, face up and play his attackers in behind as often as he normally does. And Lisandro at times, even if he was caught out of position, when he did push high, made a little tactical foul and things. So, look, there is that general willingness to push as a team, but as soon as the opposition progress a little bit, United and Amorim's side are willing to concede possession. It's something that we touched upon in our first video about Amorim, that he is willing to go periods without the ball, especially against top sides. And we saw that again. The only issue previously was that this shape wasn't compact enough and it was getting exploited. But now you've got a really compact shape and still the ability to press in certain occasions when the opportunity does allow, and it can still bring you about some potentially beneficial moments in attack.
But moving on from what Liverpool wanted to do on the ball, how Manchester United responded off the ball, into Manchester United on the ball and why they had so much success. And it was almost a bit of a strange one, because goalkeeper Andre Onana went long with pretty much every single goal kick, yet Manchester United in this game looked like a far more controlled unit, and probably the most composed I've ever seen Manchester United be in the past 5 years away at Anfield. And I want you to touch on initially how Manchester United were able to get so much control over the game, how it almost felt easy for them. Not in terms of easy to play through Liverpool, but easy for them to take the ball, have the courage, have the the cojones to actually stand on the ball at Anfield and go, right, we can play here. And I want you to touch on not just the mental, but the technical aspects of how Manchester United went to Anfield, played, and how much there is to be appreciated of that, because we went to Manchester City and everyone was like, this is a downward spiral in Manchester City team. Everyone's going there and getting 3 points, but this is probably not the most dominant Liverpool team we've seen, nowhere near, but they are top of the league. It is a team who've only lost one Premier League game, and we're now looking at it going, well, this is a pretty big result to say where we are in comparison to them. So I want you to touch on how Manchester United were able to get so much success on the ball against an Arne Slot team.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen with Amorim's side this introduction of sort of controlled temperament. We've seen Amorim sort of want to drill into his side this need to sort of slow the game down in moments where it is appropriate. And I think you mentioned a quote about Bruno Fernandes when he first came, about how Bruno Fernandes tends to play sort of at a higher tempo consistently throughout the game. Quick mention about Bruno Fernandes, I thought he was ridiculous. One of his best games for Manchester United. All time. I made a tweet about how he played like he was in flow state. It felt like everything he was doing was coming off, and it was a few seconds ahead of everybody else. And today, or rather yesterday, sorry, when he did play, he displayed some of these qualities that we're talking about. This slowness to his game, this ability to play backwards, to reset the team. I think one thing that we've seen from Manchester United in the past is, as a team that's known for its intensity and its quick attacks, there's this struggle between trying to be intense in your pressure and then therefore you feel like you need to be intense and quick in everything you do on the ball, etc. What United were against Liverpool, where they were intense in their pressure, in their press, but when they did have the ball, they were measured. They often reset, and when they did reset, particularly as the game went on, Liverpool were not able to press as well as they did initially. I thought Liverpool pressed really well to begin with. Diaz, in particular, Jones and Gakpo as well. Mo Salah on the other side, less so involved, but still in good positions to pin United in, and United had to go long quite a few times in that first half. But one, I do think it is partly the fact that Liverpool tired a little bit into that second half. When Diaz wasn't as effective, United and their first line, so Maguire in particular, but also Lisandro and Diaz, they had a lot more time to play on the ball, pick these passes and pen Liverpool in a little bit. On top of that, with United resetting the play a lot more often, they had deep players, they had players attacking the last line, they had really wide players, they stretched the pitch out as much as they possibly could, and in doing so, it's hard to cover all of those distances.
Yeah, so I wanted to just touch on what Umir just talked about there in terms of Manchester United did play a certain way in this game that's not going to be applicable to every single game, and I want to talk about how they got so much control over the game tactically. And Manchester United, as we know, build in a 3-2 base with the wing backs nice, high and wide, and if you think of Liverpool's shape over the past years, we've often seen that 4-3-3 that's really narrow, and that's similar to how they played today in the press, because Arne Slot usually goes 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-4, but he wanted three forwards against Manchester United's back three centre-halves. And what happened in this game, and I saw it first of all in the first 7 minutes, was when Manchester United were playing around the back three slowly, the Liverpool front three was jumping. Curtis Jones and Alexis McAllister were jumping with Kobbie Mainoo and Manuel Ugarte, and then that meant that when Lisandro Martinez with his left foot could find Dalot down the side, that Trent Alexander-Arnold was asked to step up out of right back to move on to Diogo Dalot. But the reason why he couldn't was because Bruno Fernandes was actually playing almost as a left winger and was completely holding the touchline and pinning Trent Alexander-Arnold back. And because Manchester United play with two 10s who are almost inside forwards or wingers, it meant that Ryan Gravenberch in the centre didn't really have a marking assignment or a pressing assignment in the game initially. So it meant that Ryan Gravenberch was stuck in this position where he wasn't really marking anyone ahead of Manuel Ugarte or Kobbie Mainoo, and that it was actually Andrew Robertson who was on Amad Diallo and Bruno Fernandes who was on Trent Alexander-Arnold. And we saw Manchester United cut through the press multiple times, and I think that's how they managed to get up the pitch. And then when they were comfortable on the ball, resetting it, and it almost pinned Liverpool back. And that left side, having Trent Alexander-Arnold pinned back by Bruno Fernandes, and then having the overload of Dalot also being the spare man, but being able to play balls in behind to a spinning Rasmus Højlund who was playing on the shoulder all the time, and Bruno Fernandes who's got this really intelligent off the ball movement, created not only both the goals but the Højlund 1v1. And I wanted to move on just slightly into the first goal, which was the Martinez goal. And I'm going to let Umir take this one away, but I want to talk about how Maguire was able to find Dalot, who went 1v1 with Trent, and then with that possession, Manchester United managed to push up into the Liverpool half. But then it wasn't just about having the possession in and around the box. It was also then the counter pressure of Lisandro Martinez that kept Manchester United high and that scored them the goal effectively.
Yeah, so if we go through some of the goal and some of the screenshots that illustrate that, we first see this brilliant switch. And when we do look at that switch, I think it highlights some of what I spoke about a little bit earlier, in the sense that you're not getting that intense pressure, or you're not getting that pressure as intense as we saw in the first half. We're seeing that space for the United defenders to make that pass. And as H did describe, they're going man-to-man in that midfield for those midfield two. They're trying to have Gakpo in this sort of half-and-half position. Mo Salah was often tasked with being the one to stand on Lisandro Martinez when the ball did go to him. And we've seen under Arne Slot, Mo Salah's given less defensive responsibility, so he has the energy to attack high up. So a lot of it is put on Diaz to often press the right centre-back, De Ligt, and also the centre-back. So, yeah, I think it was just a case of him getting a little bit tired as the game did progress, and United finding their feet. United have to pass the ball forward to pass it back again, and those forward and back movements, having Liverpool drop deep and then press high again, often gave United a few seconds to then play these passes. So they play a nice switch to Dalot on this side, and as you can see, Trent is in this area deep. In other situations, as H mentioned, Trent was pinned by Bruno Fernandes on that flank, and Gravenberch was left without anybody to mark. But in other occasions, Trent did follow on to the wing back in Dalot, and Gravenberch was somebody who followed Bruno Fernandes. And in this situation, that's what we're seeing. Bruno Fernandes is being marked by Gravenberch, who's trying to apply that pressure, and Dalot with separation, because Trent does have to jump out to that deeper position, has time and space to receive the ball. With that physical presence, he knocks it past him. And I think this was a little bit of a battle that gave United the edge in that second half. Dalot with the ability to receive the ball as Trent was jumping, that few seconds difference allowed Dalot to almost use Trent's momentum against him as Trent pushed forward and tried to press. If you try and push the ball past him, to change direction and to go the other way, let Dalot exploit that situation. And really good run from him in that situation. The ball into the box was good, but it comes out, and we did mention that United were really solid in their defensive shape, but from the second ball situations, they pressed. I think it was Lisandro Martinez, and this touches upon what we mentioned again with the wide centre-backs pushing forward. He actually pushes on Mo Salah and wins it before Salah gets the ball. And then from there, United have got an overload on the left side because Lisandro stays open. H has spoken about it, I've spoken about it as well. In a 3 at the back system, your wide centre-backs are almost afforded the ability to be an extra player in attack when you do have settled attacking possession. We've seen from other teams in the past, Manchester City, for example, who build in a 4, they often leave 2 back and then have maybe 2 DMs, but in general, they've got 2 centre-backs. Because United have 3 centre-backs, the wide centre-back can push forward and either underlap or be that extra player to receive the ball and play across. And Lisandro hangs up there because he knows that there's bodies behind him. In hanging up there, Bruno Fernandes moves inside. It's poor from Trent, in my opinion. He doesn't close him down. Maybe he thinks that there's players blocking that central area. McAllister's actually been pushed deep because Lisandro's pushed high up. So in that area, you'd normally expect to see McAllister, where Bruno does cut inside. Obviously, McAllister's deep in that back line. Bruno cuts inside and he plays a brilliant slide pass into Lisandro Martinez, who hits the roof of the net. Ridiculous finish, by the way, but I think that goal in itself highlights a number of principles. You've got the secondary pressure, you've got the overload from that wide centre-back joining in, you've got the time and space from the centre-backs playing the pass into the wide area, which is why Maguire is so good in those areas, and then you've got the wing-back being involved in the goal as well. So this looks like a really nice goal to illustrate those Amorim principles, and yeah, like a really, really tidy goal.
If you just wanted any more context to give you an idea as to how much Manchester United were working down that left-hand side, 55% of Manchester United's attacks come down the left-hand side, with only 18% coming down the centre, which is kind of similar to what me and Umir spoke about, with Bruno Fernandes and Amad Diallo playing almost as wingers on the ball for Manchester United and overloading them wide sides. And if you actually look at the average positions graphic from Manchester United, you can see that on the ball they've overloaded the left-hand side, but they've not just overloaded it. You can see Mazraoui's position is significantly deeper than Diogo Dalot, and that is just showing the bias to the shape that Manchester United had on the left. And this wasn't just for the Martinez goal. We obviously saw the Højlund 1v1 where Manchester United had an overload on the left-hand side, again using that ball back to Martinez and then using the long ball in behind. And what we can see from the screenshot here is that, again, Diogo Dalot and Bruno Fernandes have both pinned Ryan Gravenberch and Trent Alexander-Arnold to that left side, meaning that Højlund then has the time and the space to spin in behind Konate, and he receives the ball inside the final third against Liverpool, and he should do better in theory to work the ball past Alisson. But again, just showing you how tactical tweaks in the game and how Ruben Amorim went into the game thinking about that left-hand side, really got his team the rewards for the goal, the Højlund 1v1, and then eventually the Amad goal. And it's very similar to what Marco Silva did with Robinson in the game that they drew at Anfield as well, with the really aggressive positioning of Robinson. And just to wrap up, we're just going to finally touch on the Amad goal, which was a bit of a different goal in terms of how it came about. It was another long ball from Lisandro Martinez clipped into the left channel. Again, Højlund spinning into the channel with Bruno Fernandes actually going 1v1 against Trent Alexander-Arnold. And then it falls to Bruno Fernandes, who plays Alejandro Garnacho off the bench in behind. But during these runs in behind, Konate and Trent Alexander-Arnold have actually swapped positions, which shows that Manchester United, using that rotations on the left-hand side, really jumbled at Liverpool's defence. And then a fresh Garnacho off the bench is absolutely brilliant, 1v1. And selfless movement from Højlund to run across the front post opens up the penalty box space for Amad to sweep the ball home. And it was a really good tactical performance from Ruben Amorim, and it deserves a lot of credit. And I think Liverpool in this game were decent. I thought they were very rough technically. There was some really leggy, it almost felt like technical moments, and they are the Premier League leaders at the moment, and they deserve credit. They deserve credit for the character they've shown to come back into the game. Cody Gakpo, brilliant finish, and I thought Ryan Gravenberch on the ball, Virgil van Dijk throughout the entirety of the game really cemented them in the game comfortably, and they did look in control for the majority. But I think in terms of the statement and the intent behind the performance from Manchester United, I thought it was something that no one could have ever foreseen. Not just Manchester United going there and getting a point, but doing it in the way they did, scoring 2 goals, manipulating the 2 goals tactically, and playing on some of them principles that we're talking about. I thought it was a really, really significant game for Ruben Amorim. Right, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please don't forget to like, comment and share, and we'll be back next week with even more tactical analysis. Thank you very much. Bye.